Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Pandemic is not of concern to the Modi government. Press, publicity and perception are. Health is not the primary focus. Headlines are. At a time when the country is at war against this virulent virus, the Modi government is busy battling not the virus, but voices that seek to critique it, to criticize it, or even as much as give it feedback. From the health minister writing nasty letters to opposition leaders, to the external affairs minister telling diplomats how to counter negative coverage by foreign media, to the Delhi police now making arrests because of posters that have come up in the national capital questioning the government's vaccine policy. This government's behaviour has reeked of bullishness, of a tendency to dismiss, to shut out any unflattering feedback. The problem right now is not just the mismanagement or the mishandling of the pandemic. That is something that is not unusual, even though it does, of course, show inexperience in your ranks, but that's something a lot of state governments are also struggling with, including Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal, who's struggled to keep Delhi afloat in both phases and both waves of the pandemic. The bigger problem with this government is its complete refusal to recognize that it's doing something wrong, to listen to any voices that give it advice, and to behave in this extremely belligerent, combative manner against all their rivals at a time when you should essentially be taking everybody along. There is this compulsive need to manage headlines, a compulsive need to look good, and there's something extremely disturbing, something extremely ruthless, selfish, and frankly immature about wanting to look good, about only caring about your image at a time when people in this country are so afraid, are battling something which is so difficult to manage. Criticism, feedback and questions are a vital aspect of any thriving democracy, more so during an unprecedented crisis. Any government or leader with self-awareness, the ability to admit mistakes and course correct, and having respect for diverse views would refrain from taking such a harsh and combative stand against critics. Essentially, two things have defined the Modi government's response during the pandemic. One is a combative, offensive stand against critics, and two, this compulsive need to manage their image and to look good. Look at some of these recent examples. A former prime minister known for his intellect, known for his academic achievements, sends a well-meaning letter to the government with advice. In return, he gets a nasty letter from an otherwise mild-mannered and congenial health minister, a nasty letter which is replete with a politically caustic tone. Of course, we are referring to the exchange between former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and Health Minister Harshvardhan. Then, of course, you have the instance of the BJP President JP Nadda writing a letter to Sonia Gandhi, the Congress President, because the CWC criticized the government's handling of the pandemic, and the letter accuses the Congress of spreading false panic. Then, of course, you have the Delhi police making arrests because the national capital has posters which question the government's vaccine policy. Now, all these instances are not just excessive, they are really offensive at a time when the focus should be entirely on managing the pandemic, on fighting this war, which at the end of the day is the government's responsibility, given it was voted to power by people to protect it, to serve it. This also reeks of a lot of insecurity. Prime Minister Modi may have the people's love, may have the people's mandate, but what he does not have is a stomach to take criticism or even feedback. This is a far cry from Prime Minister Modi, who at one point in 2015 had said he actually misses criticism. Evidently, he now does not like criticism. Evidently, at this point, all he wants to do is shut out his critics. The problem at this point with this government is that, one, it has no control over what's happening in the country. The pandemic has spiraled out of control. The vaccination drive is extremely underwhelming, is extremely poor, if not anything else, and that is something the government is not being able to control. And instead of trying to focus on these important aspects, instead of trying to control these important aspects, what this government is busy doing is employing all its resources at hand to try and make its critics look bad, to try and improve its image. So you have, for the External Affairs Minister, S. Jaishankar, telling diplomats how to counter negative coverage by foreign media, and on the other hand, he's taking to Twitter to argue and to fight with Congress leader Jairam Ramesh over the supply of oxygen to embassies. Then you also have the IT cell and other BJP leaders making full use of social media to hit out at the opponents and to try and ensure the Vikas Purush image of Prime Minister Modi is not tempted. Now, the issue at this point is that when you don't have control over a certain situation, that's fine. That this is an inexperience that any government can face. This is a kind of difficult situation, sticky situation that any government can face. But to brazen it out, to pretend as if there's nothing wrong, to try and brush things under the carpet and spend all your energy and all your focus merely on trying to attack your opponents in such a belligerent, combative manner, this shows how selfish and how really ruthless this government is and how its priorities are entirely misplaced. We've seen how the government insisted on elections. We've seen what happened in West Bengal, the kind of rallies that took place, the impact of those rallies in West Bengal. And clearly the focus of the BJP government at that point, or of the BJP or of Prime Minister Modi at that point, was also not battling the virus, was not people of the country, but the focus was to win elections, just as right now their focus is to look good. Now, sure enough, image, perception, everything is very important in politics. This is something that the BJP under Prime Minister Modi has thrived on, and they've done exceedingly well because of their ability to manage PR, to be able to manage perception, to be able to manage image. But there is a time and place for everything, and this is certainly not the time to manage your image, to manage your perception, and to try and do everything in your power to make yourself look good. Because at this point, when all of this finishes and when history looks back at this phase, what will stand out is not really this government's poor handling of the pandemic. What will stand out is its blinkered and selfish response during a time of such crisis, instead of its response of serving people, instead of its response of looking within, of reflection, and of course correction. Brave men and women aren't those that don't make mistakes. They are those that make mistakes, accept them, and have the ability to listen to people who tell them that you are making mistakes. These are the brave women and men that at this point the government does not seem to have. For more, log on to our website theprint.in to read my further apologies.